from Hippie Steve. He says, of all the great commentators in pro wrestling, I feel like Bill Watts was one of the best. I've watched all of Mid-South TV, and his storytelling and putting wrestlers over is rivaled only by Jim Ross. I would like to know your thoughts on my opinion.
Bill Watts was a pretty good announcer. Bill Watts wasn't known for his humor, but he was known for building up a wrestler's credentials, being tough, being in shape, how he trained, what his moral outlook was, and what he expected out of all this training. He wanted to be a champion. Yeah, and he was kind of not easy to listen to, but when you listen to him, you got something like determination and conviction, because he made the guy into a tough competitor, especially if he was a babyface, a good guy. And even though the heels, he'd put the heels over too. You know, saying this guy's tough. Don't anybody take him lightly. And size was a big thing with Watts, because Watts was a big guy. Watts was about 6'5", and he was about not 300, but 275. He was a big guy. And so if a guy had size, and Watts didn't really want them, he didn't want the high flyers. He didn't want those. He wanted guys who he wanted athletes, but he didn't want, and you see some of the athletes, some of the wrestlers that Vince had, he gave them all kind of gimmicks, and they weren't even athletes. They couldn't even move around the ring, but he would give them a gimmick. Watts wouldn't have that. Watts, if you was a big guy, he'd give you a gimmick like you were from the woods of Arkansas. So if you go up in Arkansas, you'd be looking for this guy or his brother out in the woods. But
relatable, basically.
Yes, and that's what he liked, and that's what he based his territory on.
It does seem that promoters make very good commentators on the basis of they know exactly who the person is, exactly where they want the character to go. So they, more than anyone else, know exactly what's going to happen next, and therefore they can sort of nudge the story in that direction. Because, Vince McMahon, I always thought was a great commentator. Because he knew exactly where the stories were going, so therefore he was in the prime sort of position to tell that story to the fans.
Bill Watts knew where he wanted it to go, maybe not down to every screw in this way, but he knew who they were going to be angling with. And say the big guy, he was going to angle with Jake the Snake, and he said, "You know what I'd like to see? I've heard that Jake the Snake, and they had words the other day in the dressing room in such and such a town, and I don't think there's any love lost between these two guys." And then they start talking about each other, and then pretty soon in the next week or two, you see an actual angle on TV between these two. Now they're off and running. And Jake was very easy to do an angle with, because Jake understood the business, grew up in the business. So he understood the business. And Jake, when he did an interview, you believed him. So, see, Jake had that voice, and he never raised his voice. And when the camera would go in on him and kept going in on him and get right into his eyes, you believed what he said, because he didn't get carried away. And again, we come back to those two words we've been using, common sense, and the people believed him. So
I never understood why Jake, in his early years, just wore sweatpants with boots. I mean, was his part of his presentation always that he was a slob? because he never seemed to wear tights. He'd always wear sweatpants, boots over the sweatpants, and then a t-shirt half the time as well.
Well, I never paid that much attention to him, but he didn't wear a shirt, did he?
Sometimes he did, yeah. Sometimes he'd wear, a sleeveless shirt as well. He looked like the most dressed wrestler wrestling in America in that day.
Yeah, but Jake had that voice. He had that snake, which made him different than everybody else. And, when Jake would come to the ring, if you're watching and he pulls out that snake, you got to say, there's something up with this guy. Mm. And he was different. But then again, I listened to his interviews very closely. And he again, common sense, you kind of believed what he said too. So he would talk you into buying a ticket. That's what and his work in the ring was very believable. And when he gave that clothesline, it was about it.